The Dogs, in association with the British Greyhound Racing Board.
It's different from football and horse racing in that it has much more serious financial and economic problems. It's been in decline for 40 years, so that makes it more difficult, and it's more urgent that it modernises and that there's reform. But on the other hand, I was hugely encouraged by the passion of the people in greyhound racing, by their commitment, by their love of the sport. And if I needed it, I was certainly convinced that there is and there ought to be a great and prosperous future for this sport.
Lord Donoughue speaking in November at the launch of his report into the future running of the sport. The review and recommendations contained in it are intended to revolutionise how greyhound racing is run. And key to Donougheue's report is the setting up of a new organisation to oversee the change, the Greyhound Board of Great Britain. In this special edition of The Dogs, we talk to the major stakeholders charged with paving the way for change. Lord Lipsey, the BGRB chairman. Alistair McLean, the NGRC's chief executive. Jim Reynolds, chairman of the Trainers Association. Raymond G of the Society of Greyhound Veterinarians. Leading owner and breeder Mark Currell. Bob Gilling, secretary of the Breeders' Forum. And the GRA's Clive Feltham speaking on behalf of the Promoters Association.
David, do you think there was a need for the Donoughue report?
I think it was absolutely essential. The structure of the industry clearly wasn't working. There was too much time wasted on minor disputes and too little time looking at the strategic goals. And I think anybody reading Donougheue's report will think, oh, that's a first-class piece of work. That's the way forward for us.
Any resentment, but an outsider had to come in and do it?
Well, I think only an outsider could. You know, you get too involved and terribly bound up in greyhound racing. Actually, by the end, Lord Donoughue had become a tremendous fan of our sport, which was great. But the fact he was looking at it objectively through the eyes of a man who's done very much the same job for other sports gave him both an authority and an ability to see clearly, which shines through that report.
What was the catalyst for commissioning the report in the first place?
Well, there wasn't any one catalyst. There were a variety of little squabbles which are now forgotten, but didn't suggest we were doing everything right. And then, of course, there was the Siam disaster, which meant that the sport had to change or put up with being changed from with or without its permission. And that's what made Donoughue possible. That's what made Donoughue necessary.
Welfare is Donougheue's main priority. From the cradle to the grave is the simplest way to explain how the sport intends to keep trace of every single greyhound born in Great Britain. Breeders' Forum Secretary Bob Gilling is generally supportive of Donoughue, but feels issues of licences and fees need to be addressed.
The breeders to be licensed is really an idea that's come from within the sport, because all breeders that are responsible breeders and actually know what they're up to are not too happy when, say, perhaps a novice comes in and without the proper experience, the proper facilities, and starts breeding greyhounds and things start going wrong. And you know what it is with this, when people start doing things wrong, everybody gets tarred with the same brush. So that is a thing that, you know, licence is no problem at all, really.
The intention is to have pups registered earlier than is currently the case, with 12 weeks the recommended age for breeders to officially log earmarks, colours and family history.
Must be a good idea registering them at earmarking stage.
Yeah, it's a good idea because they're going to know exactly where these pups are going to go all the way along up to the 15 months when they were originally registered with the NGRC. But now they're going to be registered at 12 weeks at the same time. The problem being for the breeder is that at the 12 weeks when they're going to be now registered, and the fee that they say that they want for the new pup, instead of it being £26, which it is now, they're talking of a figure of around about £500, which is a terrific amount. But the idea of that is that a part of that is going to be returned when the person who owns the dog, later on in its life, when it's retired, proves that he's found a proper home for it. 70% of that fee is going to be returned. But the thing is, that doesn't happen until the dog's retired. Now, when the breeder has to pay all the registrations for, say, an average litter of 6 pups, which is £500 a time. He's talking about 2,000 or 3,000 quid there that he's got to pay for these pups because he hasn't sold any of them yet. And it comes at the same time as when he's had them all vaccinated, and that's another £250 that he's had to pay all at the same time. So before he sold one pup of his litter, he's got a bill on his plate there for about 3,500 quid. So that needs looking at.
I think there need to be great changes. I think there needed to be a modification of the current system.
Mark Currell, owner of the year and successful breeder, with a little help from his friends John and Debbie Mullins.
I wouldn't call myself a big breeder, but we probably have on average about 10, between 5 and 10 litters a year. And you know, you could be sort of 70, 80 pups, which 30, 40,000 pound is a lot of money. It could be spent, from my point of view, you know, we got quite a good homing system down at John's Kennel anyway. Actually rehomed 35, 40 dogs from there with the local RGT people. And we spend quite a bit of our own money doing that anyway. So I'm quite happy with what we do, but obviously I can't speak for everybody.
But of course, when the pups are born, the breeder is the owner, and it is the owner's responsibility to look after the greyhounds. So surely this has to be, you know, borne by the breeder until he's sold them on, and he'll then sell that registration expense on with it.
Absolutely, but being as it's never happened before, it's a bit of a shock to the breeder to say I've got to find 2,000 or 3,000 quid before I start selling on. So that may discourage some people from breeding.
So you're a man that's got a successful business and puts a lot of money into the game. Do you think maybe the introduction of these registration measures might put you off it?
I don't know if it put me off it totally. You know, you might have to think about scaling down a little bit perhaps, but at the moment I've got the bit between my teeth and I'm really enjoying it, so you know, I'll still be about.
I think you've got to be careful with any rise in fees. I was reading in one paper where they felt that the fee should be £500 a time. The owner's lot is not a particularly good lot. Everyone goes on about you buy a greyhound and you earn lots and lots of money. Absolute lie. You buy a greyhound, it's your sport, it costs you money. What we've got to do as an industry to make it viable as possible for those owners to own those greyhounds, to continue to own those greyhounds, and then to be able to afford to find homes for them when they're retired from the racing, or to actually take them home from racing themselves.
Jim Reynolds, Trainers Association chairman. With a contract at a bookmaker-owned track, his work covers all aspects of the sport.
Is transparency the key then? Is the figures? We have to know how many dogs are registered, how many dogs are racing, how many dogs have been correctly retired, and how many have been euthanized.
Transparency is in the key for the sport from start to finish. It's transparency in the dealings with the bookmakers, transparency in the running of the future GB, transparency for people that are working within the industry. So across the board, transparency is the most single important thing that's there. And as I say, there are procedures in place now that there is accountability for you owning a dog, for you training a dog, and for you working within the industry. And only time will allow you to do that. There is no other industry in the world that has the paperwork that we are dealing with and we are working with just now. Where are the 45,000 golden retrievers that are born every single year? Do you know where they are? Does anyone know where they are?
So Bob, I've heard a few complaints from you, but I haven't really heard the answers. What would you do as far as registration fees and registering of dogs are concerned?
Well, I think the registration fee shouldn't be as much as what they say. And one big problem is, even if they do that, the administration costs are going to be pretty high. So they're going to create a problem themselves. But whatever is good for the dog, that's what we'll go for.
I've said that the owners should pay, and owners do pay. They pay for the dogs, they pay for the registrations of the dogs. What I'm saying is changes as they're coming through should be structured and built in as a gradual process for them. You don't take one figure one day. I don't take my kennel fees one day and say I am £6.75 a day plus VAT and it's going to be £20 a day, which it should be, but it's not. But I wouldn't do that because as a business I wouldn't survive if I did that. It's got to be, a structure has got to be put in place to bring gradual change to take it through.
Coming up after the break, we talk to the two main authorities preparing for change and amalgamation into the Greyhound Board of Great Britain.
I think if the industry doesn't follow the broad lines, they don't have to obey every dot and comma, but if they don't follow the broad lines, if they don't modernise, if they don't make welfare a top priority, then the future is quite bleak. And it's quite possible that the government, which is already regulating the industry through the new Animal Welfare Act, may have to step in even further and take the sport out of its own hands.
Greyhound racing is currently policed by the NGRC. Indeed, the club is seen as the sport's rulers. Its chief executive, Alistair McLean, is a key figure in the transitional period to the setting up of the new Greyhound Board of Great Britain, and feels Donoughue offered a balanced view.
I think Lord Donoughue recognised the changes that had taken place in recent times. He, I think, specifically commented on the fact that it was a well-run ship, and that the team were well motivated and running on a very, very tight budget.
Is there anything in the report that you either strongly disagree with or surprised you greatly?
Not really. I mean, it is after all a report on regulation, principally, with the looking at greyhound racing in total, and to that extent it's a very positive report for regulation. If it's fully implemented, it will be good for the sport, there's no doubt about that.
Donoughue effectively suggests the bringing together of the NGRC, BGRB and the fund under one umbrella organisation. The lead up to the report's publication suggested this might not be well received by the major stakeholders who've become involved in a power struggle, but McLean disagrees.
We all expected that, to be honest. Lord Donoughue done some work in the horse racing industry, and of course it was pretty evident from that his favourite model would be a bringing together of the various stakeholders. So to that extent it wasn't a surprise.
Is the Donoughue report recommending a genuine amalgamation of the two organisations, or is one going to get the upper hand here?
It's a genuine amalgamation, and it's something that will go beyond, however, both organisations, with the fact that there's now going to be an independent majority on the governing body. That will make a huge difference to sport, as, for example, it has already in horse racing, where he's done something very similar.
Now, a timescale for transition is a very tight one, or the recommendation is within the year. Do you think that's achievable?
I think Lord Donoughue has set a very tight timetable for the very reason that it keeps people focused. And by keeping the industry focused, it means that things will get done. If there was no timetable put in place, I think it's very likely that things would have been adjourned and put back as to a later time.
As far as the timetable is concerned, I don't think Donoughue gives a precise timetable, and it will depend on various things, like how quickly the sport recruits a chairman for the new board going forward. But I think it's much better done quickly. If we hang around in a state of not knowing where things are going to end up, we'll start losing staff, we'll start losing confidence. The sooner Donougheue's in place, as far as I'm concerned, the better.
What are the first stages that need to be taken?
Well, the new chief executive for the new organisation has to be chosen, the chairman has to be chosen, the transition committee has to be set up. We need to get a proper staff structure in place, which will include most of the people who work for the two organisations at the moment. And then we'll gradually build from there. What's important is that it's structure first, policy afterwards. Many of the policies have been quite controversial within the report. I think, for example, of the regulation of breeding or higher registration fees for dogs. Those, Donoughue makes perfectly clear, will be for the new board to decide. They won't be put in place from day one, if they ever are.
Now, Alice, you seem to have a bit between your teeth here. You're actually looking forward to the transition?
I think it's a great challenge, and it's a very exciting one for the sport. It seems that the stakeholders have bought the essence of the review, have bought into the proposals that Lord Donoughue has recommended, and it probably should be full steam ahead very soon.
It's likely that your CV will be appearing for the CEO job?
Well, I'd like to see what the job entails. Currently Chief Executive of the NGRC, I know what my job is. The GB is a very different proposition, but I think if I see the job description, then I may consider it then.
And what role do you want on the new board?
Well, I'm going to go on playing a role in greyhound racing, but I think it would be better if they found a new chairman who was able to bring a new start to its existence. You know, when you've been in this business for a while, you tend to end up with a bit of blood on your hands, and I think I'd rather somebody who was coming to it clean.
Did you think that would please some people in the greyhound industry if you weren't taking an active role?
It'll delight many people in the greyhound racing world. I hope there's some people who will say, well, maybe Lipsy didn't do such a bad job after all, but that's for history to decide.
The GB will legislate all tracks, whether big or small. The various bodies will be represented. But the actual composition of the new board remains a contested area, with the promoters seen as holding most of the power. But their representative, Clive Feltham, feels the sport is ready for this new start.
Everyone's got their concerns. I think we've all lived through the past and New Deal and NGRC taking on the BGRB and the BGRB taking on the NGRC. So I think there was a feeling that really we needed a fresh start. I think often the promoters are painted as the sort of ogres of the piece, really sort of dominating the situation. I think if you talk to most promoters, they're sometimes sitting on the sidelines frustrated that we can't take the sport forward, or we don't go in the right direction, or we have so much infighting.
However, Bob Gilling remains concerned that the grassroots has not been recognised enough and is in danger of losing its voice.
I mean, I've represented the breeders on the BGRB, and on the BGRB, the grassroots have been represented by 2 owners, 1 breeder and 1 trainer. According to the recommendation for the new board, the owners, trainers and breeders haven't actually got 1 direct seat on the board, only going to be represented by a practitioner. Whereas on the previous board there were 5 promoters, and on the new board there's going to be 3. So therefore it appears to me that if there was ever come to any votes, we might as well stay at home, because we're going to have no power whatsoever.
Some cynics might say that you would accept the report because it actually gives you a little bit more power on the new formation of a GBGB board.
I don't think so, not necessarily. I mean, at the moment with the BGRB board, as you know, we actually took a dilution in our seats going back a couple of years when Lord Lipsey came on board and brought 2 independents. We're relaxed with that. I think ultimately the investment in the business that promoters have is trying to get the balance right, that we don't have a majority, but that we have, I say, we can't walk away at any time. We've got these tracks, we've got to manage them. No matter what happens, we are there. So in some respects, it's trying to get the balance right, and I think that's what Lord Donoughue was trying to do, get balance in the makeup of that board. But obviously, clearly, a strength of independent directors in there, that should really overcome a lot of the issues we've had in the past, I think.
There may be 3 independent members, but how do we know they're going to have the interests of the owners, trainers and breeders? I mean, they would have an independent view, but we're not too sure what their views will be.
I mean, you've got to look into the corporate world. I mean, this isn't, what you're seeing here is the makeup of a board. I mean, independent directors do carry a lot of weight. I'd say the 2 independent directors that we've had on the BGRB have made a massive difference in terms of getting objectivity, taking away some of the sort of partisan views on things. I think it's incredibly important, and I think you will have a robust board at the end with everyone being able to put their views forward.
So it is very difficult, because you have to have a small enough board to be manageable. It's rather too big a board at the moment, as it happens, and at the same time represent the various groups within greyhound racing and have an independent majority. You can't square that circle easily. But I believe that following last week's meeting of my own board, the owners, trainers and breeders now are broadly satisfied. Lord Donoughue made it clear to them that one of the independent reps can also be an owner, representing owners' interests, and I think it's come out as well as they hoped. And as the owners' rep said, the industry is going down the pan at the moment. We've got to make this work, and I think they will throw themselves wholeheartedly into making it work.
Lord Donougheu's report also recommended that independent tracks are brought under the auspices of the new organisation. The flaps will be integrated and policed along the same lines as the current crop of NGRC venues.
There was a need to regulate independent racing. There have been many slip-ups between licensed racing and independent racing in the past. There is a need under the Animal Welfare Act that all greyhound racing is regulated, whether it be licensed or unlicensed. And to that extent, we fully expected Lord Donoughue to address that topic. His recommendations were, of course, very interesting, and I think it's something that the whole sport needs to properly consider before going forward.
If such a move is successful, vets need to be employed at these newly integrated tracks to ensure welfare guidelines are met.
The thing is that we're concerned about welfare. Welfare does mean that there have got to be and on-the-track presence by a veterinary surgeon when dogs are racing or trialling. Hopefully it would also include drug testing, because dogs that are running when they're under medication are liable to damage themselves. There is a matter of integrity of betting, but we feel this is not our particular concern. But any moves to improve welfare on the independent tracks is welcomed.
And to avoid any conflict of interest, Donoughue has recommended that the sport pays vets independently and not as part of an individual track's payroll.
There is a feeling of apprehension, perhaps, shall I say, that on occasions decisions that the duty veterinary surgeon might make might be in conflict with that of the promoters. If the promoters are paying the vets, then there is possibly a conflict of interest.
So do you see that recommendation as a way of keeping the vet totally independent?
Yes, and we welcome that.
Lord Donougheu's report covered all factions and issues affecting the sport in the future. It's been read and digested, and its success will depend on how greyhound racing reacts to it and allows for the transition. It seems so far so good.
Are you pleasantly surprised that all the stakeholders in the sport have actually accepted Donoughue?
Not surprised, amazed. I mean, if somebody had said that all the organisations would come together and back this report before it had come out, I think I'd have said they were in cloud cuckoo land. And that is a tribute to the quality of the analysis in Donoughue, because everybody looking at it, whatever their particular perspective, has to say, this man's understood what we're about, and he's understood where we're going to go, we better get behind it.
Now, the Donoughue report was delivered with some guarded optimism for the future of the sport. Would you agree with that?
We will always have greyhound racing. End of story. It's got a fantastic history. It's been here for a long time, and it will continue to be here for a long time.
In terms of my company's wrapped up in the success of the greyhound industry. If we can get more people to come through the turnstiles and more people betting on greyhound racing, it's got to be good for us as well.
If the Donoughue report, though, is a medium to long-term view, is that going to be soon enough for the GRA?
Oh yeah, we've been around since 1927. I think we're going to be around a long time yet.
I think you have to be positive about the future. We have to work together. There's many people involved, from breeders, owners, trainers, promoters, and the bookmakers, and the regulatory function have to make this work. Lord Donoughue has given us an opportunity to make it work.
I freely admit the sport has not come as far commercially during the 4 years I've been chairman. I said I should have liked it to be. It will have to do so over the next 4 or 5 years if it's to fulfil its fantastic potential in the modern leisure world.
But do you think it's a forlorn hope? Do you think there is enough potential out there, or does it need some more subsidy, like in the Irish example?
Oh, if I thought it was a forlorn hope, I'd have gone a long time ago to play my harp on some distant hill. I think it is likely that we succeed. I think there are people in the industry who've got the drive and the determination to make us succeed, and when we get the structures right, which we're about to do, I think we will succeed.
If you plan on going racing this week, see our website, thedogs.co.uk, and support your local track. Next week there's live action with the Racing Post Juvenile Championship from Wimbledon here on Sky Sports.
The Dogs, in association with the British Greyhound Racing Board.